Hello and welcome to Art Show. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me James Maurelle. Hey, James, how are you today?
Doing great, Craig.
Thrilled to have you here. We go back a few years. We had an exhibit of yours at the gallery. Loved your
Mhm,
work, and
mhm,
I want to immediately start sharing a few pieces of yours for anyone who's watching who might not for me be familiar with your work.
mhm,
Um, so. Uh, I chose pieces that obviously I loved. And
mhm,
I always loved this particular piece. I think we showed this at the gallery.
mhm.
And I just love this. Can you tell me a little bit about this particular piece?
Yeah.
I was going back a few years, right?
Yeah, it's going back some years. Grad school to
Oh,
be.
really?
Yeah, I was collecting. I started collecting just materials. Started doing a lot of dumpster diving, right? In and around campus at University of Pennsylvania.
Uh,
And I found a whole bunch of print screens. And I just removed the screen part of the print. And I was going through this frames, right? This conversation around frames, and I wanted to make objects with frames. I made a couple of pieces. This is the second one that I made. It's called Papa Robeson, uh, Paul Robeson.
hmm.
Um,
I
yeah.
love the shape that you created with these pieces. Now, does was that just a lot of experimentation, or
Mhm.
did you see the frames and it kind of popped into your head what to do with them?
Yeah, they lived in my studio for a little bit before it like germinated and kind of like told me what it was supposed to be. But I know that I didn't live that far from Paul Robeson's his home,
Hmm.
and I was thinking about his work, singing, activism, and also films on Emperor Jones. And I just the the the, the song um, about the Mississippi River, Old Man River,
Hmm.
and just the navigation of that river and the history of it, and the paddles, the steamboat paddle. So I just
Nice. Nice, because I love when an artist gives me a little tidbit of something that completely changes my understanding of a piece of work. So, I loved visiting the Robeson house. I thought it was just
Mhm.
fantastic. And I feel more people should get there. But
Right.
now it kind of clicks together. I hadn't thought about that. Does that often happen with you where you will have materials and it just takes some time before you have that aha moment?
Yeah, it's just sitting with the materials and doing a lot of listening,
Hmm.
right, and prep, uh, and it just happens, right?
Did that happen maybe with this piece, or was this looks like it comes from a different direction now?
Yeah, this is thank you to I have to get a shout out to Mr. Billy Dufala from Rare. He he's always on the prowl for materials for me and picks up the gems. And this was one piece that grew into something I wasn't really intentionally wanted to make.
Mm.
Uh this piece happened. I didn't know what this piece was going to be until after, like, months after I made it.
Hmm.
And this is a my it's a shoe shine box, a
Mm.
cart. And I I named it after Pele. People call him, Pele, but it's Edson. And
Hmm.
it was a documentary that came out on Netflix about his life. And he at a young age he had to work, and he shining shoes, but it was also a huge strain on this is childhood, right? And growing up in poverty, and that's just my hero growing up as a child, and also as an adult. And I'm a extreme football
Hmm.
fanatic. And I made this piece with him in mind as a portraiture.
Mhm.
And in the documentary, he's talking about his childhood and him having to work in shine shoes, and he picks up, a shoe shine box, and he plays it like an instrument.
Now I
And
got to go back and watch that.
so I not until I saw the documentary, I didn't really know what I made. I knew it was him in mind, but
Hmm.
it just, once again, it shocked me into existence.
Hmm.
I
I love
just
the form, the overall. It's got so many parts that my eye just stops at and absorbs for a while, but then it moves around to find other little surprises. Like I love those little feet, how they're
yeah.
a little different, but they're
Mhm,
I just it works for me. Now I don't know about you, but I know that people are always giving me stuff too. And
mhm, mhm,
sometimes they'll give me something and I'll be like, I will never use this, but I smile politely. And but other
mhm,
times I'm like, ooh, this is going to be good. It might be
right.
years before I use it.
Mhm, mhm,
So I'm guessing the same thing kind of happens with
mhm,
most artists. So
mhm,
this was actually the first piece I selected off your site, and
mhm,
it's just the form, the shape of this is so
mhm,
soothing
mhm,
to me, and
mhm,
it's I mean, it looks like an instrument, almost like an instrument of torture, but it's not.
mhm,
not. And
mhm,
it's just the overall shape. It made me think of like some of the later works of Perrier. You know,
mhm,
just the way that there's those surprise little circles on the
mhm,
bottom. Um,
right.
and anything about this piece I should know that it's going to totally change it for me?
Yeah. I growing up as a kid, there were my experience of the just sports, right? In America, it's football, baseball, right? Baseball and basketball, right? I grew up watching all those sports, but I remember one moment with my dad, and he was like, Jimbo, come watch these brothers hit this ball, and how he said it, and it it was cricket,
Mm-hmm.
and the Maroons, and it's the history of the cricket team in the West Indies, is something that I stumbled across, and that was a bonding moment with my dad. But how I looked at the game as a child, I think I was maybe 5 or 6. It reminded me of Alvin Ailey, the dance troupe. This, these bodies, these colors, and the all white, right? And the green, and this dance, and the velocity, but also this grace and beauty. So I was thinking about the Maroons and making a cricket paddle, and just the history of researching, you know, the wood, willow, and where they make most of the cricket accessories, and for protection. But how does one, if someone's on an island, and how do you play a game, but also you have to maintain your equipment, and how do you substitute for things? So it's like different types of wood.
Mm-hmm.
um the string or the lace is butcher string, right? And the circles are toothpicks, bamboo toothpick.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
you did it. You made it switch in my head. So
Yeah.
that's so I knew you mostly primarily as a sculptor,
Mhm.
but this was years ago. But
Oh, wow.
uh, and I
Okay.
don't know if that was you were just keeping
Mhm.
all this other stuff from me,
Mhm.
but now I see
Mhm.
that you're really showing that you've got photography and video and
Mhm.
sound all together, and it's wonderful to see that in combination with your sculptural works. So
Mhm.
this particular one, there was a whole series of
Mhm.
photographs
Mhm.
of, I'm assuming they're taken by you, not found by you.
Yeah.
And they're all similar in that
Mhm.
they're legs.
Yes.
So why?
Why? um Shout outs to folks from the Bay Area. A lot of these images, when I was I went to the Institute in San Francisco, which is pretty much no more. I got a chance to work with um, Lynn Hershman Leeson, the Kushar brothers, and my sensei Hiro Narita with film. A lot of folks don't know. Before I came to Penn and went to grad school, I was a filmmaker, slash design and technology,
Okay.
and yeah, the BART north. I lived in Berkeley for a little bit, and my route going into the city, into San Francisco, going to the Institute, I would catch the BART up the North Berkeley BART station. That's where I started, and just riding the BART, I just started to take images, and I used my iPhone, right, when it was one of the first ones I was excited about having, so I can take pictures. And I use this little, this not little, but this app, Instamatic,
Hmm.
and Instamatic or Insta, it would
Makes it
Instant,
look like a Polaroid.
yeah, and it's just so many filters, and I was just, I just, well, I'm gonna document, but I'm kind of I'm kind of shy and really
Hmm.
not,
So
kind
the
of.
people didn't know that you were taking the photograph.
No, not at all. So it was mostly like how the positioning of the phone, right?
Uh-huh.
And to look to use it as if I were looking at like a television show or something like that. But I just had this the relate wow, the the mechanics, or the characters and the narrative driven with folks, their feet, and the relationships thereof, of like people who are commuters, and like this, I would never see them again, but just how they would sit, how they would hold their posture, and their feet, what type of feet, the bags, all these things. So it just turned into like a series. I haven't revisited it, but I did kind of, but not with feet, with gloves. But this is something that I'm really happy with. Yay, the gloves.
So, like when I
Yeah.
went on your website, you
Hmm.
have them all listed there, and it's
Hmm.
makes a huge impact. And I
Hmm.
thought about like, well, can I show just one because it doesn't really do it
Right.
justice with one. But so
Hmm.
you had, and then you have multiples of these abandoned gloves, I imagine, but they're like
Yeah.
found sculptures.
Yeah. It started with one,
Mhm.
and it went over, just over a period of time of just the study of like gloves and the history and the narrative behind gloves. And once going back to like filmmaking and the posture of the gloves, how it was lost, where was it coming out of a car? Was it
Right.
out of a bag? But most of the time it was late fall, winter was
Hmm.
most of the time where folks would, it was either a glove or an umbrella if it were, raining.
When you started this, did you suddenly realize there's like gloves everywhere?
Yeah,
Because
they
I
were.
was shocked by the number of gloves that you were
Mhm.
able to
Yeah,
photograph.
I yeah, it's on. I would think. I mean, I have at least another maybe 50 or 60 photos, or just in hard drives that I haven't even put on the website.
I
But
know. So
that it's fun.
this is the last photograph I wanted to share, and
Mhm.
I want to urge people to go to your website. I'll put in a link up here too,
Mhm.
just because of the videos and the sound
Mhm.
pieces that you have on there
Mhm.
really help complete
Mhm.
the understanding of who you are as an artist. I just couldn't show them here.
Mhm.
Um, but you had this was also a lesson. Now, is this using that same sort of Polaroid filter?
Yes, the different. It's an amazing app. It filters lenses, but also uh speeds, right? And
Mm-hmm.
film stock. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, film is something that's just a part of like my life. The first
Yeah.
like this as a kid growing up, but images of you know, I I see this image, and like I can tell exactly the mind state of where I was.
So, speaking of where you were, you had mentioned earlier a memory about your father watching cricket.
Mhm.
I'm curious to know. I love starting out these interviews with this question, which was, you know, Do you remember your first exposure to art, to like fine art? You have like an aha moment? Some people don't. Some people, it's like
Yeah,
a slow slide, but
yeah. There are pieces, right? That there was something different. There was something going on. In childhood, you're not going to get into critique or anything, about art. But I remember being at an exhibit in LACMA as a kid, and it was a little back in the day. Oh man, I haven't been in such a long time. I'm thinking it's either La Brea or La Cienega. I can't remember. But the cross street was Wilshire. And at one time, it used to be a May company. And across the street, it was a diner. And it's been in a lot of films. But up the block is La Brea Tar Pits, right? But right on the corner, near the May, near the, yeah, it was the May company. On the second floor, there was a Nam June Paik exhibit. And that was the first time something happened, right? And it was
Mhm.
just a whole bunch of pink TVs and the American flag and it was I just stood there and stared there. I was just staring at this and I didn't know what was happening to me. Later on in life, knowing who John, the
Yeah,
grandfather of, and that's one moment in a active public space,
yeah.
but
So normally an artist will give me like one little tidbit. So you're up to like
mhm.
three or four now of where
Okay.
it's totally changing. I love to ask
Yeah.
that question because sometimes an artist will say, like,
Hmm.
I did one the other day and she was like, oh, I saw a Twombly exhibit when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and her work was so influenced by Twombly, but not
Hmm.
directly, but I could see the
Hmm.
hints in it. So you
Hmm.
saying Nam June Paik,
Hmm.
the idea that there's video and there's
Hmm.
visual arts and there's sound usually, and how that
Yeah.
comes together. That's very, very interesting to
Hmm.
me. It helps, it
Hmm.
helps me to understand a little bit more about your work. So
Hmm.
so let's move forward. So
Hmm.
you were a kid, you had exposure, whatnot. At what point did you end up saying like, okay, I think I want to be an artist. Let's follow
Hmm.
that route.
Yeah. Uh, that didn't happen when I was a kid.
Right.
Art didn't happen until grad school,
Okay.
and sculpture didn't happen until grad school. I started making objects in grad school, but it's like only thing I can say it's the creativity in in my life. It's been a patchwork, right? And so a little bit of gabardine and or you know no silk, but velour,
Hmm.
right? And these terry cloth to stitch together this quilt, right? Of creativity and expression. And not until I graduated from grad school, and I did a residency at Skowhegan, and that's when it dawned on me that what was happening,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And these questions and these things that were said to me, I've never really heard them before. So it was just um, yeah.
Sometimes I find that artists are either the first one or the last one to know that they're going to be an
Mhm.
artist.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, it definitely was a transformative experience for me. It's something that I wish everyone, non-artists, to have that experience, to be someplace with a group of people away from a city or anything, just to focus on what you're focusing on. But the faculty, I still the relationships that I made there with just amazing people. Sorry to roll call. It's like Sarah Workna, amazing. Um, my brother Odelio Dita, amazing. Uh, the the list go Latoya Ruby Frazier,
Hmm.
the what she this those moments that people said the thing that you needed. Theastrigates, he put my work in a place where it's palpable for me to understand at that state where it's like, oh, artist, you know. And then after it was over, to come to that realization that this is what I've always done, but it wasn't pointed and defined as that, right? Because I grew up in this building, working class, you know, the trade school type environment, right? Which I'm still, my materials are of the trades and
Right.
like that, but the conversation about it, it's totally different. So
I want to move on, but I do have one quick question for you. Did you ever have a camera as a kid?
yeah. My dad was the first one to put a camera in my hand at 12 years old, a Pentax ME Super, and I still have it, and it still works, and I still shoot with it.
That's great. So how many cameras do you own? Is it just that one and your iPhone?
I have a few.
Few.
I have a Spotmatic. That was I purchased that in Japan. That was the same camera that Chris Marker shot La Jetée with. So
that's a favorite.
Yeah, and couple of, you know, I have a couple of cameras. It's still cameras
Here and there. I was going to ask you, have you ever heard the story about Ben Shahn? You know, the painter Ben Shahn, his camera. So he had a 4x5, but he had it specially designed that it would shoot out the side. So when he was photographing people, they wouldn't know that he was photographing them.
Wow.
It was
Okay.
genius. Yeah. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about your creative process. I'm curious to know, when you go to start something new, is it because you're walking into the studio with ideas, or do you find that maybe it's just playing with materials, or what's your current modus operandi?
Yeah, when I enter the studio space, materials are, I even when I'm not making work or I'm focused on making a piece, I'm always collecting materials, and they just multiply in a space and thinking, living with them, right? Living with.
Do you ever have to call it, like, all right, I have too much, I gotta.
Yeah, so it's just occupying one space and it's shipped to another space, and then it'll come out of that space back to the main space. So it's like a juggling and moving, this constant negotiation with understanding of space, right? And the primer is just to recognize that what I'm doing isn't something totally about me imposing my will onto materials. It's the first thing I do. I break my knees in prayer for a day that doesn't end in me putting my eye out or getting a few. I've gotten a few stitches before, but nothing really traumatic. And I start my set or my jam session with John Coltrane playlist. And so I start with A Love Supreme, and I end with John Coltrane live in Japan. So that's
that's a good one. Yeah, I'm a big Giant Steps fan myself, because his house is right around the corner from my studio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. It's about Train. Not taking anything from anyone else. Arnett Coleman, Miles, but Train, or just jazz as a component to my practice. That happened in grad school. Shout out to Dr. Guthrie Ramsey.
I assume you can't have silence in your studio. You gotta have
something. No. I can run my studio with silence, right?
Okay.
But it's in my head, right? But it's more colors, the sounds of colors, right?
I got you. So I want to make sure I get this question in. Tell me a little bit about your audience for your work. You're making something. Are you conscious of your audience as you're making the work? If you're trying to, project a certain storyline or an image, or do you just not worry about the audience. You're more worried
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
your vision or your voice.
Yeah. I'm making work, right?
Mhm.
I enjoy making, and not I know that someone is going to see what I've made, but I'm not making work to be seen necessarily. But if there is an audience, I mean, I shouldn't even say if there is an audience, and whenever I have shows, um, and I show work, there are two groups of folks that I want to um, come in to see my shows or see my work. And the first is children. I love to see children come in, and that's the catalyst right there. When a child comes in, thank God for parents and bringing their children to see art, how they interact and engage my work. That's how I know when I'm in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And also the trades person. I have countless conversation when folks to see, like copper sculptures, and it's like, man, it's are you a plumber? There's a plumber that sweated those pipes. It's like, absolutely. I try to keep it clean. Right. Something that I learned, and that's where I turn on that type of draw, not excluding, folks who are artists and academics, but it's just that grounds me in a way, and humbles me in a way where some of these folks really are, it's a different type of conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's I'm in between, these conversations. So I push this way, or I push that way, and that's where I love being. That's my wheelhouse, and that's pretty much where I'm going to stay.
So I
Mhm.
I bring up audiences, and I
Mhm.
find a lot of artists, they cringe when I even
Mhm.
mention audiences, because
Yeah.
some love to talk about them, and others are
Mhm.
like, no, I don't want to deal with them at all, like they're
Mhm.
making art in a vacuum. Um,
Mhm.
so I've got time for just two more questions for you.
Mhm.
One is a simple question like,
Mhm.
do you consider your works to be at all autobiographical,
Mhm.
or do you make work and try to be it outside your own
Mhm.
life?
See, that's the thing. I mean, when you're there, right, when it's happening,
Mhm.
it when you're open, right? When you're open, I'm not an MC, but when the cipher is happening and it's just that flow, right? You tell on yourself, things come out,
Yep.
right? And then it's revealing, right? And like, oh, uh-oh, okay. Well, it's something you have to redigest
Right, right.
and deal with it, right? And I don't steer away from it, but steer in a way I'm not. Here's a map to my life in that way. There's other things in other mediums that I expose that autobiographical, through film, writing, photography, in,
Right.
in sound. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Good, good one. Very good. I'm glad that you went down that path. Okay, last question. Question I ask all artists.
Mm-hmm.
Simple question.
Mm-hmm.
What does making art do for you?
Mm. What does making art do for me? That's a great question. It helps me. It doesn't help me. It's making art or making objects, right? In particular, to focus in on it. It's to me, it's my mortality, right? It that I just yeah, it's inevitable,
Right.
right? And the reason I'm making this work is the sustainability of my family, and that doesn't come without opportunities like this, right? But it's for my family, it's for my partner and my two little girls, and my responsibility is to make and to have some aside, for them, right? And to not and to, not to be a burden, but it's for them, because I'm not going to be here forever,
Mhm.
right? And documentation, objects, writing, journals, photography, film. a body of work,
Hmm.
right? And to be mindful of this work, right? And to be all accepting, but it's really, the more, we all, when our numbers up, our numbers up. So each day to me is a great day, and it's
Hmm.
about making, right? And sharing, right? And that's the reason why, I love
Why?
to teach
Yeah.
and
I
to
love answering that question for what
Mhm,
the way people answer it in different
mhm,
formats. So,
mhm,
like, there are a few artists like you where you start out, and then the more you think about it, the
mhm,
crisper your answer gets
right.
towards
Mhm,
the end. I love that. So,
mhm,
obviously, James, I would love to continue to talk to you more. I now have another 20 questions for you, so maybe we'll do a part two later on. But I
mhm.
want to thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming by today and talking with
Mhm,
me. I
yeah.
really appreciate it.
Mhm,
I encourage everybody to go see James's website and ask him questions, talk to him.
mhm,
I want to also thank you for tuning in today to watch ArtShow, to
mhm.
learn about James. We love it when you like and share, and of course, subscribe really helps us moving on. If you do have any questions for James, you can put them in the comments section below, and I will try to pass them on if I can't answer them myself. But again, James, thank you very much for coming by today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Have a great day.